Hello and welcome to Inspired Caregiver. My name is Michelle. I created this podcast because I was the primary family caregiver for both of my grandmothers for a collective 7 years, which meant I handled everything from car keys to managing their households, dealing with all this stuff, and then ultimately end-of-life care. And I've worked in senior living as a result of that experience for over 7 years. So this podcast is designed to share with you insights, tips, tricks, and inspiration through those experiences, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Inspired Caregiver. Well, hi, John Day.
Hello, how are you?
I'm lovely. Thank you so much for being with us today. John is with the Alzheimer's Association and has a lot of great information to share for people that are caregivers, either at home or not at home, just in general. Anybody that's helping out a family member or friend that may have some dementia. So can you share a little bit about just the association in general? Like, is it only for people with Alzheimer's, or is there more to it than that?
No, yeah. So we try to have the whole encompassing aspect of Alzheimer's and dementia, but we do a lot of like caregiver support and that nature as well. So anybody who is, may have a family member, may know somebody, or maybe caregivers that are giving somebody to family members or working in facilities and need more resources. You're a business and you're looking to provide more resources for your employees. You're a family member that's wondering more about Alzheimer's and wondering if it's something that you need to be concerned with. We provide that full mission support. So our association is the Nebraska chapter, and so we will help provide any resources that we can for the state of Nebraska. So anywhere that you live, we try to find support groups and information and resources for you in any capacity that you need. So we really try to help and point people in the direction that best suits their needs.
That's great. So let's say one of the things that I hear repeatedly from families is that they go to the doctor, they get a diagnosis, and the doctor may say, well, call your Alzheimer's Association for whatever's next. Like, doctors aren't really even educated about what families should be doing next. So what would be a next step for somebody well, I guess let's just start with if you're concerned that maybe something's going on.
Right. So like our number one thing that we usually tell people is to, number one, reach out to us for the Nebraska chapter. And we will definitely provide you whatever resource we can. But really what we have is the helpline. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week helpline. It provides many languages and, any time of the day, anything you need, any resources. So generally your first step is to call this number, and that's at 1-800-272-3900. And that is, you will be contacted with a health professional. It's not some operator. It's not somebody that just, is doing it to just provide basic information. It is somebody who is equipped to answer any level of conversation, any level of question that you have. So if it's anything from what's my first step, or what is Alzheimer's, what is dementia? Like, I don't even know what this is. Where do I start?
Right.
To the higher levels of, hey, I hear about this drug, or I hear about this treatment, or I hear about this, like what could I be doing? So they are a great first step to giving you the kind of the guidelines and the path to move forward from there. And then after you get those resources, then that's where we can really provide even more detailed local resources for you to, point you in the direction of support groups, point you in the directions of facilities that are providing resources, the virtual or in-person groups and education that we have, that we can offer to you is going to be that next step after that phone call. So I highly suggest to call that helpline first, after that doctor's visit, or after, your first concern, and get ahead of it as early as possible, because that is the biggest thing now, is really trying to diagnose, or really trying to kind of figure this out as early as possible, because quality of life can improve the earlier we see these signs, or the earlier we get educated.
So that 800 number, is that only for people in Nebraska, or is that a number, or are there local chapters all over?
No, so that 800 number is our like worldwide number. Anybody can call that number.
Okay.
That will go to a hub, and that's what the beauty of is that it's no matter where you are, no matter what language you have, whatever it is, it allows you to get the resources and to kind of understand that. And then after that 800 number, then that's where you could call us locally, and then we can provide you with the resources that you have in your area.
Okay. And I know in our area specifically, there are a lot of different support groups,
Mhm.
and they're at different days of the week, different
Yep.
times of day. They have different leaders that are trained volunteers.
Yep.
So, what do you know, like what's happening? I actually facilitated a support group for a year at one of
Okay.
our local um, properties, and it was people from the community that came in. So
Yeah.
their person had respite care for that couple hours they were in the meeting.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with, I know sometimes people are reluctant to engage with a support group. So I didn't know if you had some ideas about different topics that would come up, or how do we
Yeah. There's
encourage people?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it is, so we have for Nebraska, we have the resources right now because a lot of the support groups are back in person. I think that
Mhm.
was the really hardest part with mental health, especially with Alzheimer's and dementia, is that when groups went virtually, it really took down participation. I think
Right.
support groups are can be done virtually, but I think it's such a bigger impact when we can be in person and we can connect on that level as well. But so a lot of them are coming back in person, which is really good. And we have them. I have a list in front of me. I mean, there's from Fremont to Bellevue to Kearney to Shadron to Columbus, Broken Bow to Omaha area. It really depends on, it could be a church that puts it on, it could be a healthcare facility that puts it on,
Mhm.
um, just a local center that puts it on. And some of them are led by individuals who are caregivers that may be caring for somebody now, and or maybe have lost somebody and support there. It could be from somebody in a long-term facility that puts it on, that has that impact as well. So it has a wide variety of either volunteer led or health professional led, or somebody who's had that experience with it as well. So my suggestion is to, if you can find that support group, just a quick email, and just
Mhm.
connect in that way, or even a quick phone call, and just be like, hey, here are my concerns. Here's what I'm worried about. And you're not the only one that had that concern. There are
Right.
so many people that have that concern about starting a support group. What do I say? How do I get involved? What do I do when I'm there? What kind of questions do I need to ask? All that stuff can be easily taken off your chest if you just make that connection, make those phone calls. They want you there. They want to support you. I strongly think that these resources um, need to be even more utilized. I think a lot of people try to deal with it on their own, and we're a community, and it is much better to reach out your hand to try to get that support from an expert, somebody who's been there, and then that just grows into being more comfortable and being more open with your questions, and how you can provide resource for yourself or for the one that you are caring for.
Well, and I think so often people think that what they're experiencing is super unique and
Yeah.
special or really embarrassing. And so the
Mhm.
idea of engaging in a support group feels a little overwhelming, or there's pride.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think that's the stigma behind, Alzheimer's and
yeah.
dementia, but just mental health in general. I think there's a lot of stigma behind that because number one, we talk about our physical well-being quite a bit. We don't talk about our like mental, emotional well-being. And so, it's one of those things that I think Alzheimer's, and my experience with discussing with people, is that so many people don't want to feel like they're losing their memory, losing their
Mhm.
intelligence, losing that
Right.
part of their life because they don't want to feel that way in front of people. They don't want to, have that. And so, I think when we talk about, 1 in 6, people are, over 65 as dementia, as Alzheimer's, or, things like that. It's so much more prevalent. And I think if we can build that conversation and that awareness behind it, I think more people will be comfortable discussing that and finding that, sense of community of like, oh, this person's dealing with it too. And this person, once I spoke up,
Mhm.
these other people spoke up. And now I have this thread of resources and friends and somebody who I can call and discuss my worries and my fears, but also my joys if things come up that I learned and all that kind of stuff too. So I think the
Right.
more we discuss it, the more the better it's going to be.
Well, and I think sometimes what we would find in our group is that we could bring some levity to the situation because everything feels so heavy and serious. And sometimes some of the things that happen are kind of funny, not just to the people that are the care providers, but
Right.
also
Yeah.
the person diagnosed. So it helps to be in community with people so that you
Yes.
can laugh a little bit.
Yes. Yes, for sure. I think that's kind of the thing is that, I think if we can bring all sides of emotions to that table, I think it just helps people express it in their own ways and be able to have those conversations. And yeah, and it's just like just make it a human thing,
Right.
and so yeah, that's great that's people are able to do that because, I think that just shows growth and just, that acceptability of it and just openness of it. So yeah, I totally
Totally.
agree.
So it sounds like, in addition to the support groups, do you have, and there are some groups that may potentially still be virtual for people,
Mhm.
depending on geography or
Yep.
accessibility, that sort of thing
Yep.
as well. And then what about education? What kind of educational offerings does the association have?
Yeah, so there are actually, when we go to alz.org. So the Alzheimer's Association, their website is alz.org. And there is a plethora of information in there. And there's a link that's called like help and support. And that link can really kind of provide you with education and trainings that are free for everybody. A lot of the fundraising that we do, a lot of the, things that we put on throughout the year to help fundraise for the Alzheimer's Association, those are what help provide the funding for these programs to make them free for everybody and anybody. You don't have to be like a member. You don't have to have Alzheimer's. You don't have to have dementia. You don't have to be a healthcare provider. You could be anybody that's like, I want to learn more. What are the options that I have? And there's videos, there's articles, there's blogs, there's a whole bunch of resources. So the first one, like our education center, is just
Mhm.
training.alz.org. And they have a whole bunch of trainings that you can add to your what they call a cart that you can watch now. You can pause it. It's like online courses that you can do. And those are really good, professionally run, science research, doctor, led educations to just to help broaden your view on what you're looking for, either from early stages or very detailed, getting into those, middle to late stages and things like that. There's a lot of also, it's called ALZ Connected. And this can help with individuals who maybe are caregivers,
Okay.
or individuals who have Alzheimer's. And so that's another great resource for people who are like, I have Alzheimer's and I want to learn more. So here's my list, but maybe my spouse or maybe my friend or maybe whoever it is, they're the caregiver. Okay, now here's resources for the caregiver because there's going to be differing things that everybody's going to need to know and need to be able to approach. And so I think that alzconnected.org is another way of kind of like, okay, where am I at in this cycle? And
Mhm.
if I'm a caregiver, here's my information. If I have somebody that has Alzheimer's or dementia early at these sites, can we learn together and what to expect and what we can look forward to? So, and these are all free resources. These are just on the internet.
Amazing.
These are all right there at your fingertips to be able to use, and to be able to do it on your own. It's constantly there. They're updating them as we get more information, with the disease and the progress that we're making with it.
One of the things that came to mind when you were talking about who could access the videos is I just had a call with someone who has some concerns about a neighbor.
Mm,
So even if you it's that is the situation that you're facing, to go onto this
Yeah.
website and pull some different resources would be really
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing, and hopefully I don't go on a tangent here, but that's the other thing that if I haven't already, um, that's another thing that I think is really hard for people is, you know, how do I bring this up? Right? I think we were
Yes,
kind of discussing before this interview. I think so many people are afraid of like, okay, is this Alzheimer's? Is this dementia?
right.
Or the stigma of like, well, I'm getting older, so I'm losing my memory. Is it that, or are we challenging our brain? Are we reading still? Are we stimulating our brain in a way that keeps us sharp, keeps us there to where it may not be dementia and Alzheimer's? It may be something where it's just like, I need to stimulate my learning, my intelligence, my capacity of reading or playing strategy games or puzzles or doing things that stimulate myself to keep me sharp, to keep that stuff,
Right.
right?
Maybe
And
you're
so
just bored.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, you need to
Yeah.
challenge yourself, try something new, create that stimulus. But I think so many people are afraid of, you know, how do I ask that question? You know what I mean? Be
Mhm.
like, I don't want to say you have dementias or Alzheimer's. I feel like I'm offending you if you do. So, like you said, like I think these
Mhm.
resources and I think these training sessions and these education things will educate you to know like, okay, what are the true signs?
Right.
So many people are like, well, I just keep forgetting that I got to pick up 3:15 to 3:30. That's a difference between all of a sudden you notice your wife or husband or loved one or grandpa or whatever putting their keys in the freezer, right?
Right.
There's a difference between that, like
Right.
putting something in a freezer or putting it in the fridge and not knowing that it's there or forgetting that they put it there for some odd reason. That's a unique sign of dementia and Alzheimer's, where just misplacing your keys of like, oh, I thought I put it on the counter, but I actually put it on the couch. That's it's a little bit different. So I think knowing those signs and knowing the level of things, but also being aware of it can really help you determine, all right, how do I need to approach this conversation? And like you said, I think the resources and education side of it can help you determine what type of conversation and how to approach it. Can make things even more accepting for the individual who you're
Right.
speaking with.
Well, and depending on what the situation is, it's going to be a different conversation if it's a spouse situation
Right.
versus a
Yeah.
parent situation versus a
Yeah.
sibling situation. So,
Yeah.
which kind
Yeah.
of leads back to you and I, being in the fields that we're in, use that word caregiver very
Yes.
frequently. And I think so
Yes.
many people just don't identify as a caregiver. They think, well, it's
Right.
just my grandma. Like, I'm just helping out my
Right.
grandma.
Yeah.
So, how do we encourage people to, they don't have to take on that identity or role per se, but just to know that these resources are available to them.
Right. And I think that's one of those things that like, you know, it brings me a story. So there's a gal that she was a nurse, she was a health professional, she was a professional caregiver,
Mm,
um, but uh, lost her husband to Alzheimer's.
mm,
But she was like, I think I even being in the field, even there being at my spouse, being at my husband, I may have missed the signs by 5 to 6 to 8 years. Like a lot of times when it's somebody you love, somebody you care for, somebody you're there living with, you may not take that, you know what I mean? You may not see those signs. You may not see that,
right,
because you do love them and you don't want to see those faults in people, right? You
right.
want to see them as perfect. You want to see them as the one that you love, and not that you don't after the fact, but it's just I think a lot of times we may not take, and that's the hard part, and I think that's a really hard part with Alzheimer's and dementia. And I think that's what makes it really unique is that sometimes subconsciously or consciously don't see the signs right away or want to ignore it or don't want to believe that it's happening to somebody we love. And so that's a really hard thing to deal with, and it's something that to recognize. So I think knowing that if you're taking time out of your day, or if you're making sure that your grandma or grandpa or whoever is doing X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, you're a caregiver,
Right.
and there's so much unpaid caregiving work in the United States, that takes away from, if it's your own career, if it's your own, daily life or whatever it may be, you're a caregiver. You don't have to be an educated professional going through school to be called a caregiver. There are
Right.
professional caregivers that do it for a living. They get paid to do it. And then there's loved ones and there's family members and there's friends and family that do it, because you love somebody and because you care for them. And so that designates you as a caregiver. You might be an
Right.
unpaid caregiver, but I think I think a lot of people do it out of love and do it out of that, and really sacrifice themselves, for the one they love to help them along. And I think that's another thing we discuss, and something that I was involved with a program that we did in November, was a lot of times the health of the caregiver is affected negatively
Absolutely.
while
Yes.
providing care for that, right? So that caregiver stress and that caregiver health is also an important issue to be aware of. Yes, we want to focus on our, individual who has Alzheimer's or dementia, but we also need to provide financial health and, mental, whatever it is, help to these unpaid caregivers, because they are, statistically,
Yeah.
n- going in the wrong direction for their health, because a lot of times they put themselves second, right?
Yeah.
Especially females, they show this, and it's a lot of females will put themselves second in for the person they're giving care for. And so, I always, my preface is when I talk to people is that, like, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not 100%, you're not able to give 100% to your caregiver. You know what I mean? If I'm
Right.
unhealthy and I'm losing this and I'm not taking care of myself, or I'm stressed out or whatever it is, then you're not able to maximize your care for the person that you love as well. So
Yeah.
that's that caregiver, issue too. Is such a just really hard, um, thing to discuss too, because you don't want to complain, because you may not be the one that has
Right.
Alzheimer's, dementia. So, like, you complaining is like, well, what do I have to complain about? You know what I mean? But it's okay. It's hard to do that stuff. It's draining. It's hard to see your loved one go through that, but also it's really hard for you, as for your health as well. So that, I think those paid and unpaid caregivers are just, they're it's just it's really hard, and they deserve a lot of our attention as well.
Yeah, you cannot pour from an empty pitcher. That's
Right, right.
one of the key things I always say in presentations.
Hmm.
You have to care for yourself, and then if you continue to care for yourself, that pitcher will overflow, and
Right.
then you can give.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
understand it is
100%.
easier said than done.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I I really do, especially if you're in a situation where for you to step away from the home,
yeah,
there could be some safety issues, you
right,
know.
right. And that, like, that time, to where these are, again, just the stories that I hear, the time and where, when is it time for me to step aside? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, when do I need to make a professional, healthcare choice of, okay, my loved one needs more than I can give.
Right.
And that's, like, emotional, and that's, I can't imagine, I just can't imagine that, and so, that's got to be just one of the hardest decisions. It's what's best now for the individual, and not necessarily what I feel is best, could be different, and what I want, what I mean? And I can't imagine that stuff. So, I mean,
No.
those are, like, the emotional, tolls that, I mean, it's just, that's why Alzheimer's is, and dementia is just, it's so much broader than just people losing their memory. You know what I mean? It's how it impacts the loved ones, and layers of people that it impacts, and family and coworkers, and all these kinds of things. And it's such an emotional disease. Not that others aren't, but it's just it's
Right.
it's it's so hard to, like, somebody said to me, he's like, I've lost somebody in two diseases, and he's like,
Mhm.
I could still, the person still knew me as a cancer patient until their death. I lost my loved one 10 years before,
Wow.
and I was like, that's a very deep, you lose two people, but one you lose so much earlier than their
Right.
actual passing, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, it's just the emotional side of things. So, like, that's, I think, where like the healthcare and the mental, physical, emotional well-being of the caregiver, if we're staying on that topic, is just is there's just so much more that needs to be talked about.
Well, and it circles back to the importance of support groups, because it's
Yeah.
they can be mixed groups of people who have walked that path before.
Right.
So when you are trying to make those hard decisions, they can help support you
Hmm.
as you are making those decisions for your family.
Right.
You
Right.
know, the bottom line is it's all hard and it's
Yeah.
all awful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um,
There's no easy decisions.
there's no easy decisions.
Right.
But having that group in place to have your back
Yeah.
is critical, because a lot of times what I hear and see and have experienced is not everybody in the family will agree. And that's something
Right.
that's come up in the support group that I facilitated. Was, you know, the kids were not happy that the mother had to make a choice, a
Hmm.
decision to have the father placed in an assisted living memory care, but she physically could not do it anymore. It's very frequent to have someone move into an assisted living memory care and then the partner or care provider ends up in the hospital.
Right.
That is
Right.
something that I have seen often.
Right. Right. I mean,
So
it's just like, it's, you're, yeah, I mean, it's that like, you see it with certain things. It's just that emotional dump, that stress all of a sudden, like, just hits,
yeah,
when those significant life changes occur,
yeah,
where you're almost living and fighting here because you're trying to do so much. And then when something gets taken care of, then it's like, and then like your health,
ooh,
like you then like, oh, like, and then all of
right,
a sudden you get sick, you get this, you get
right,
that, and I think people see that all the time with certain things. I think people, like, even just smaller bits of that, is that like you have this huge project or huge stress thing or huge whatever, and you're so ingrained in it, and then all of a sudden you get done with it and you have time to breathe. Then all of a sudden you get sick, and you get like a cold, or
right,
you get, it's like it's a totally different level of it, but like we all experience that. And
yes,
just I can't imagine, when you talk about that, the severities of things. So it's all relative, but people need to understand that it's so hard to to relate to that if you've never had to have that conversation or have to have
right.
that
Well, and you
decision.
can't place yourself on a scale of misery compared to other
Right.
people, which I think is also an important factor in the support groups, is that you think, well, I don't have it as bad as so and so.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that support group can really offer you insight,
Hmm.
and support on those days when you're like, you know what, though, this is really still very hard. It might not
Yeah.
be as bad as someone
Right.
else, but
Right. Yeah. I mean, no, yeah, I guess, like, maybe I mentioned this already, but nobody likes to complain,
yeah,
and it's like you're not complaining, you're just expressing how you feel. And you
right,
know what? It sucks, and that's okay to say, and it's nobody wants to say that it's hard, and that it's really stressful, and that some days it sucks. But you're doing all you can. But it's just, I think that, like you said, like, that other person next to you being like, yeah, it does suck some days, but like, yeah, it does, I still love the person, but it does,
right,
this is rough, this is tough. And it's like you build that, because I think, like you said, if it's only one person, then like you feel bad for that. But you got to
mhm,
realize that, like, so many people are going through what you're going through. And yeah, and what you're doing with the support groups and what other people are doing in support groups, I mean, it's just amazing work.
yeah. Well, speaking of amazing work, we've covered the support groups the association puts on, the education pieces, virtual
Mhm.
options, and then there's the walk, which is something that
Yeah.
you spearhead and has been a huge benefit to the Omaha area. Can you talk a little bit about the walk and just what it means and how it works? And
So my technical role is the manager for the walks here in Omaha and then in Sarpy County, which is held in Papillion. Um, and so what I do is, throughout the year, is to one, try to increase our funding through sponsorships, through business engagement, through family and friends support as well. But ultimately during that time, I try to push our full mission. Because the more, if I go to X company and just say, hey, I want a donation, great, we have the dollars, but maybe we're not making an impact within their business. Maybe we're not, I would love to do lunch and learns. I would love to do, support groups in there. I would love to show them that you have people that are either maybe going to have Alzheimer's, dementia. You have people that are caregivers, like we mentioned, so how can you show your employees that you care for, this disease and this. So we try to, my end on the walk is to not only try to be it the biggest fundraiser we do annually, but ultimately getting more community engagement, getting more business engagement of how we can provide our full mission to those things. And so it's an annual event that we put on, and it's in October. And what we try to do is we try to raise as much funds. And what happens is that people sign up as teams. We have company teams, like I mentioned before, we have family and friends teams, and they're all different. We have banks, we have healthcare, we have long-term, we have just, neighbors, just people who are supportive and people who just want to, provide funds to our stuff. And like I mentioned before, that funding is what provides the free education and free programs and support groups that we offer. So that's a big pool of money that really can help people as we go through this. But after all that, engagement, the day of the walk is it's a celebratory, emotional day, right? It's one of those things that I think from an outsider for me, this year was my first official walk that I've been to. And so it's one of those things that I think the day of, seeing the companies that support it and knowing there's the resources and having that almost yearly get together of people that you may not see. Maybe this is your annual time and you're like, hey, I know this family is going through the same thing as I went through, and we connected, and now we talk, and now we share our stories, and we share our struggles and ups and downs and all that kind of stuff. It's a very much of that family community like atmosphere.
Yes.
And it's a beautiful thing. And then when we talk about, the different flowers, and we talk about, one day finding the cure for Alzheimer's, like to see the people holding their flowers and to see the people they're supporting it, like it's an emotional thing, and I think that is the piece. It's a walk, of course. So then afterwards we walk, but I really truly think we call it the flower ceremony, the garden ceremony, is that I think that's the piece that brings people back, is that, we're all in this fight together in all different levels. Maybe we lost somebody, maybe we're here to support somebody, I might be a caregiver, or, maybe I just saw the event come out and I'm walking and I'm seeing what's going on and seeing the community of people. So it's an amazing event that we put on, and we do it nationally. So a lot of states have theirs. We have 8 walks in Nebraska. Other states have 1 to 2 to 3. Some of them have like 20, depending upon the size of, the state. But I think right now, I think nationally, we're like over $80 million, I believe, in fundraising. So it's an amazing event. And both the walks that I do in Omaha and Sarpy, we met our goals, which is amazing for this year. And I know next year we're looking to make it even bigger and better. So yeah, it's a great event to come to and to be a part of. And I'm just always trying to make it so much bigger in the sense of participation and fundraising and things like that. But ultimately, bringing awareness of Alzheimer's and dementia is the number one goal. And that walk is a great way to do that.
And I agree. It was a very uplifting, celebratory energy at the walk this year. And I think, for somebody listening to this, if maybe they're not currently a caregiver, maybe you own a company and you have a team of employees to touch base, and they have older parents or grandparents, touch base with them and check in with them. And, potentially this could be a really great opportunity for you to be in support to one of your team members. Have a team for them and show a rally of support. And of course, sponsor, do a sponsorship for your local walk, because it's just helping so many people. I mean,
Yeah.
I keep looking around our community and we have all of these buildings full of companies with
So
people,
many.
and so
Yeah.
many people are in this caregiver role.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful to everything that the association does within, the boundaries of our state. And I know it's happening
Yeah.
around the country and world. So
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And again, it's again, like it's people like you that are here to support it. You're here to, make it more known and doing these, you know, interviews and podcasts and, all these different things. Like it just spreads the word even more. So we're grateful for individuals like yourself to, take the time to promote us and to give us, and give us the time to help spread the word because yeah, because I mean it's the more help we can get, it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, what kind of help you want to provide, like we need it, and Alzheimer's is it's something that again, it's one of the diseases that does not have a cure. You know what I mean? We have not
right,
had a survivor of Alzheimer's yet. You know what I mean? I think that's something that people really need to understand is that you have survivors of cancer, you have survivors of other diseases. We don't have a
mhm,
survivor of Alzheimer's. I'm not saying other diseases aren't there, but like
right,
in the sense of, finding a cure, I mean, that is such a push and any help we can get to help funding and research and getting out there and providing that education and seeing what we can do is the utmost importance. So all this is just amazing. So I appreciate, you know, all the things that you're doing too, Michelle. It's great.
well, it's my pleasure. Can you give that 800 number one more time?
Yes, it is 1-800 272 3900.
Perfect. And I will drop that into the show notes, and I can put your contact information down there
Yeah,
if anybody wants to reach out to you about
yep,
walk or
definitely.
um, any questions they may have. So
Yeah, that'd be
thank you
perfect. That'd be
very
great.
much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. This is great.
Well, I'm sure see you at some meeting sometime soon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. We'll have one coming up here pretty quick.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing this time with me today. If there is anyone that you know that would benefit from hearing this podcast, I would love it if you would share it with them. My goal, my crazy big, audacious goal, is that my podcast helps 10,000 people every week along their caregiver journey. So thank you so much for helping spread the word about Inspired Caregiver.